A tariff is a tax, but not just any tax. It's a special fee that governments place on goods coming into a country from abroad. When a government imposes a tariff on imported goods, it's essentially making those products more expensive for anyone who wants to buy them. For example, imagine a toy car from China that costs $10 to import. If the government adds a 25% tariff, the price jumps to $12.50 before it even hits the shelves. The main goal of tariffs is to make foreign goods less attractive by raising their prices, so shoppers are more likely to choose products made at home. This helps protect local industries and jobs from being undercut by cheaper imports. But there's a flip side. Tariffs can mean higher prices for everyone. Consumers pay more at the store, and businesses that rely on imported materials see their costs go up. American companies that use foreign parts in their products may face tough choices: raise prices, cut costs elsewhere, or risk losing customers. Over time, this can lead to fewer sales and even layoffs. Supporters of tariffs argue they're necessary to shield domestic industries from unfair competition, such as when foreign governments subsidize their own companies, making their goods artificially cheap. Critics, however, warn that tariffs can trigger trade wars. Other countries may retaliate by imposing their own tariffs, escalating tensions, and raising costs for everyone involved. For instance, if the US taxes European cars, Europe might respond by taxing American goods in return, creating a cycle of tit-for-tat measures that can spiral out of control. This back and forth can disrupt global supply chains, delay shipments, and even lead to shortages or empty shelves, affecting both businesses and everyday shoppers. The debate over tariffs is like a tug-of-war, with one side pulling for free trade and lower prices, and the other fighting to protect American jobs and industries. Any major change in tariff policy, especially one decided by the Supreme Court, can have sweeping consequences for the economy, businesses, and workers across the country. The stakes are high. Tariffs influence everything from the price of your next smartphone to the survival of entire industries, shaping the way we live and work. That's why understanding tariffs, and the decisions made about them, is crucial for anyone who wants to grasp the real impact of the Supreme Court's ruling on trade and taxes. The tariffs at the heart of this Supreme Court case were a signature part of President Trump's America First agenda, a bold promise to put American workers and industries first in the global economy. Trump's approach marked a sharp departure from decades of free trade policies, signaling a new era of economic nationalism. Starting in 2018, his administration imposed sweeping tariffs, mainly targeting China, but also extending to traditional allies like Canada and the European Union. These tariffs affected hundreds of billions of dollars in goods, shaking up global supply chains and sparking intense debate at home and abroad. The goals were ambitious: reduce the trade deficit, fight what the administration called unfair foreign practices, and revive U.S. manufacturing. Trump argued that these measures would bring jobs back to American soil and restore the country's industrial might. To justify tariffs on steel and aluminum, Trump invoked existing laws, like Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, claiming national security was at risk if America lost its ability to produce these critical materials. For Chinese goods, the administration turned to Section 301, which allowed the U.S. to retaliate against what it saw as unfair trade practices, including intellectual property theft and forced technology transfers. Supporters saw tariffs as powerful leverage for negotiating better trade deals and a necessary tool to protect American jobs and industries from foreign competition. They believed tough action was long overdue. Critics, however, argued that the tariffs backfired, hurting U.S. businesses, especially farmers and manufacturers, by triggering foreign retaliation, raising costs for imported materials, and disrupting established markets. Many questioned whether the national security justification was being stretched too far, used as a cover for economic motives rather than genuine defense concerns. This legal dispute over presidential power and the true purpose of the tariffs set the stage for a dramatic Supreme Court showdown, raising fundamental questions about the limits of executive authority. The outcome would determine just how far a president can go in shaping U.S. trade policy alone, and whether future leaders can wield tariffs as a tool of both economic and political strategy. Lawsuits against the Trump tariffs began almost immediately, as soon as the new trade measures were announced. Businesses, trade groups, and even some foreign governments quickly mobilized their legal teams, determined to challenge what they saw as an unprecedented use of executive power. Their main argument was rooted in the Constitution. Only Congress has the explicit authority to regulate trade and impose taxes. Many business leaders felt blindsided, arguing that the administration had bypassed the checks and balances designed to prevent overreach. They claimed the administration misused laws originally intended for national security, twisting them to justify broad economic protectionism. This, they said, set a dangerous precedent that could undermine the separation of powers. The government, on the other hand, countered that Congress had intentionally given the president broad authority to act swiftly when national security was at risk, especially in a rapidly changing global economy. The legal fight began in the U.S. Court of International Trade. After months of arguments and testimony, the court sided with the businesses, declaring the tariffs an overreach of presidential power. The government quickly appealed, but the Federal Circuit upheld the lower court's ruling, emphasizing that the president's power, while significant, is not without limits and must be exercised within the framework set by Congress. The courts found the connection between steel imports from allied nations and a genuine threat to national security to be too weak to justify such sweeping tariffs. This set a major legal precedent. The executive branch must provide clear, credible evidence of a real security threat before imposing tariffs under national security laws. Recognizing the national and international significance, the Supreme Court decided to fast-track the case, moving it to the top of their docket for urgent review. Billions of dollars in trade, the livelihoods of countless workers, and the delicate balance of power between Congress and the president all hung in the balance as the nation watched. The stage was set for a historic Supreme Court decision, one that would define the limits of presidential authority in trade for generations to come. The outcome would not only impact U.S. economic policy, but also shape the future of global trade and the role of the presidency for years to come. On October 20, 2025, the Supreme Court struck down the Trump-era tariffs in a 6-3 decision. The majority ruled that the administration's use of national security as a justification was too broad and overstepped executive authority. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that Congress, not the president, holds the main power to regulate trade and taxes. The court said national security can't be used as a catch-all for economic policy. The dissent warned this limits the president's ability to act quickly in global affairs, but the majority's decision stands. This ruling marks a major shift, reining in presidential power over trade. The Supreme Court's decision draws a clear line. The president can't unilaterally impose sweeping tariffs without strong, direct justification. This ruling restores Congress's primary role in trade and economic policy. Future presidents will need to work with lawmakers or negotiate trade deals, not just declare national security threats. The decision is a check on using emergency powers for routine economic issues. It signals that courts will scrutinize executive actions with big economic impacts. The ruling could influence other areas where presidents use broad authority, from environmental rules to immigration. The message is clear. Presidential leadership must stay within constitutional limits. Congress now has more oversight, and the president must seek approval for major economic moves. This restores a balance many felt had been lost. The end of the tariffs will ripple through the economy. Businesses relying on imports, like a Wisconsin bike maker using foreign steel, will see costs drop and may lower prices or hire more workers. Consumers could benefit from lower prices on cars, appliances, and everyday goods. But U.S. steel and aluminum producers may struggle with renewed foreign competition. The ruling highlights the trade-off. What helps one sector can hurt another. Wall Street is likely to welcome the decision, as it reduces uncertainty and trade war fears. Investors prefer stable, rules-based trade over unpredictable tariffs. The decision is expected to boost confidence and economic activity. The Supreme Court's decision forces future presidents to work with Congress on major trade actions. The era of unilateral tariffs justified by vague security claims is over. Trade policy will return to the legislative process with more debate and compromise. Presidents may focus on negotiating trade deals or targeted sanctions, not blanket tariffs. Allies will welcome the return to predictable, rules-based trade. The ruling could help repair strained international relationships. The debate over free trade versus protectionism will continue, but now Congress is back at the center. America's economic future will be shaped by open debate and lawmaking, as the Constitution intended.